What if this same thing we do for fun could actually help us tackle the planet's biggest challenges? It sounds a little out there, I know, but today we're going to dig into some fascinating research that asks a really bold question. Can we literally play our way to a better future?
So let's just get right to it with a huge question. Can a game really solve something as massive and complex as climate change? I mean, it sounds like something straight out of science fiction, right? But it's a very serious question that researchers are grappling with as they face what they call super wicked problems.
So what in the world is a super wicked problem? Well, it's not just a regular tough problem. It's got three key ingredients. First, the clock is ticking. Time is running out. Second, there's no single person or group in charge to fix it. And third, and this is the real kicker, the very people who are trying to solve the problem are also the ones causing it. It's a tangled mess where the usual solutions just don't cut it.
And that's exactly why researchers are having to think way outside the box. They're looking past the usual strategies and are turning to a tool that you probably wouldn't expect: games. Yeah, you heard that right. Not just for entertainment, but as serious platforms to try and unravel these huge problems in our cities and our environment.
And look, this isn't just a theory, it's already happening out there. These serious games are being used to get communities ready for things like earthquakes, to get everyday citizens involved in designing their own cities, and even to nudge us all toward using less energy. They're basically these safe virtual sandboxes where we can test out big ideas and see the consequences without, real-world risk.
But as this field started to explode and hundreds of these games were being made, researchers noticed something was missing. In all this excitement and innovation, a really basic question wasn't being asked. What's the actual point of each game? What is it really, truly trying to accomplish?
And when they took a closer look, they found it was, well, kind of a mess. It was like the Wild West. Everyone was building their own thing, which is great, but there was no common language, no shared way to talk about what they were building or why. Without some kind of blueprint, it was almost impossible to figure out what was working and what wasn't.
So to bring some order to this chaos, the researchers came up with a brilliantly simple blueprint. They called it the 3P framework. After looking at 133 different studies, they realized that pretty much all of these serious games boil down to one or maybe a mix of three core goals: pedagogy, persuasion, and participation.
All right, let's break that down. The first P is pedagogy. This is the teaching P. These games are all about raising awareness, giving us new information, and helping us wrap our heads around the really deep, tangled-up causes and effects of these super wicked problems.
A perfect example of this in action is a game called eCity. On the surface, you're just building a city, but under the hood, it's teaching you really complex skills like project management and how to solve problems with sustainable development in mind. It's learning by doing, which is so powerful.
Okay, next up is the second P: persuasion. Now this is a big step up from just teaching. Persuasion games are designed to actually change our attitudes and, most importantly, to motivate us to change our real-world behavior. They're all about closing that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it.
You can see this with a game called Cool Choices. It uses a little friendly competition between teams to nudge people to use less energy. And by getting people to share their own success stories, it helps these new green habits spread like wildfire, making them feel normal and even cool.
And that brings us to our final P: participation. These games are less about what one person learns or does and more about what we can do together. They're like digital town squares, a place to bring everyone from regular citizens to the experts and policymakers to the same table to collaborate and build a shared vision for the future.
A really fantastic example here is Gardens gamification. It uses actual real-world map data to let people in a city co-manage their own public parks and green spaces. By giving people that direct hand in shaping their own neighborhood, the game creates this incredible sense of ownership and responsibility.
So now that we have our 3 Ps, which one do you think is the most popular? Well, when researchers looked at games that had just one single purpose, a clear winner emerged: persuasion. Games trying to change our behavior came out on top with 43 instances. Right behind it was pedagogy, or teaching, with 37, and then participation with 27. But here's where it gets really cool. The researchers found that these purposes aren't just random. They line up perfectly with specific topics. For something like urban planning, where you need everyone to work together, participation games are the go-to. For something like energy efficiency, which is all about individual habits, persuasion games are key. It just makes perfect sense, right?
So what's next?
Well, the research also gave the field a clear to-do list. There are still some big gaps. For starters, we need to know if the behavior changes from these games actually stick around long-term. Also, a lot of these games are just one-offs. Imagine interconnected game worlds. We're also a little stuck on basic ideas like recycling when we could be tackling huge concepts like reuse. And maybe most importantly, we need a standard way to actually measure if these games are working.
Which brings us right back to where we started. Now you have this incredible tool, the 3P framework: pedagogy, persuasion, and participation. So think about your own world, your community, your job. What's a super wicked problem that you see? And now for the big question. Do you think it could be solved with a game?